Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why did I let them talk to me like that? Or worse, feeling drained, invisible, or dismissed? What if I told you the way you speak, just a few words, your tone, and even your silence can decide whether people respect you, walk all over you, or are drawn magnetically towards you? Today, I want to reveal something most people never realize. The biggest reason people don't get the respect they deserve isn't intelligence, money, or confidence. It's the way they speak. Not just what you say, but how you say it. We've all faced difficult people, the interrupters, the know-it-alls, the ones who undermine or dismiss us. And here's the truth. If you don't handle them the right way, you lose credibility, power, and presence. But if you learn these principles, you'll never feel small in a conversation again. You'll know exactly how to command respect without aggression and become someone people naturally pay attention to. Stay with me until the end because I'll share 6 key shifts that can transform the way people respond to you forever. You want to know one of the fastest ways people give away their power? It's the words that come out of their mouths. Tiny little phrases that feel harmless, polite, even humble, but what they're really doing is bleeding away your authority in real time. Think about how often you hear people start with, I think, or maybe we could, or I'm sorry, but you've probably said them too. I know I have. They slip out almost automatically because we're trained to soften our words, to not seem too direct, to keep the peace. But here's the catch. Those words don't make people like you more. They make people take you less seriously. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone asks for your opinion in a meeting. Instead of saying, I think we should try this approach, you say, we should try this approach. The difference is just 2 words, I think, but one version makes you sound like you're unsure of yourself, and the other makes you sound like someone worth listening to. Those little disclaimers dilute your presence. They signal to the other person, don't hold me accountable, I'm not fully confident. And if you're not confident in your own words, why should anyone else be? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to become harsh or arrogant. Confidence doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It simply has to be clear. When you strip away the fillers, your words land heavier, like anchors instead of feathers. People remember them. People respect them. Another one that slips in everywhere. Sorry. You bump into someone, fine. That deserves an apology. But how often do you say sorry when you've done nothing wrong? Sorry to bother you. Sorry for asking. Sorry I'm late when you were on time, but feel like you might have inconvenienced someone. That word, overused, tells the world you're in a constant state of shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Here's the fix. Instead of sorry, replace it with gratitude. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate your time. Same humility, but it keeps your self-respect intact. And then there's just. Pay attention to how often that sneaks into your language. I just wanted to check in. I just have a quick question. That single word makes it sound like you're begging for permission to speak. Remove it, and suddenly your sentence has weight. I wanted to check in. I have a question. That's direct, clean, confident. Every time you catch yourself softening your language with these little fillers, ask yourself, am I speaking from insecurity or from intention? Because intention is powerful. It means you've chosen your words to represent you fully, not to protect yourself from rejection, not to downplay your worth, but to stand in it. When you cut out power-leaking language, you don't have to try harder to be respected. Respect naturally follows you because your words carry strength. One of the most underrated skills in communication, especially when you're dealing with difficult people, is silence. Most of us are terrified of it. We rush to fill the space. We over-explain. We talk ourselves into corners, all because we think if we don't respond immediately, we'll look weak or unsure. But here's the truth. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is power. And the moment you learn how to use it, people start leaning in, not away. Think about the last time someone challenged you, maybe cut you off or threw a passive-aggressive remark your way. What was your instinct? Probably to defend yourself right away, to fire back, to prove your point. That's natural, but it's also exactly what difficult people want. They want you flustered. They want you on defense. Because when you're rushing to respond, you're not in control anymore. The person who controls the pace of the conversation controls the conversation. And silence slows everything down. Picture this. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Instead of pushing harder to be heard, you stop talking. You simply pause. You look at them, calm and steady. Suddenly, the dynamic shifts. They realize they stepped over a line, and they feel that tension. That pause is heavier than any comeback you could deliver, because it communicates without words. I'm not competing for space. I belong here. Silence also gives your words gravity. When you finish making an important point, don't rush into another sentence. Let it hang. That pause forces people to sit with what you just said. It's like a punchline in comedy. If you deliver it and immediately talk over it, the impact is gone. But if you give it space, it lands, and people remember it. Now, this doesn't mean you stay silent all the time or use it to punish people. That's not power. That's passive aggression. The difference is intention. Silence with intention communicates strength. Silence without intention communicates avoidance. When you pause deliberately, you're signaling, I'm steady, I'm not rattled, and I don't need to scramble for approval. One of the best places to use silence is after someone asks a challenging question. Instead of blurting out the first answer that comes to mind, Take a beat, breathe, think. The pause shows that you're not shaken. It also shows you value your words enough to choose them carefully. People notice that. It commands attention. And here's something fascinating. Silence often makes the other person reveal more than they intended. When you don't rush to fill the gap, they get uncomfortable and keep talking. And in that space, they often give you more information, soften their stance, or even backtrack. You didn't have to argue. You just had to hold your ground in silence. The bottom line is this: silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's full of strength. And when you use it well, you don't just win arguments. You shift the entire atmosphere of the conversation. One of the most common challenges we face when dealing with difficult people is interruption. You've been there. You're in the middle of making a point, and someone jumps in, cuts you off, or completely hijacks the conversation. And in that moment, it's tempting to fight for space, to raise your voice, to match their energy. But here's the problem. When you fight for space, you often lose respect. You might win the volume battle, but you lose the authority. Authority doesn't come from being louder, it comes from being unshakable. When someone interrupts you, instead of battling for airtime, redirect with calm firmness. Let them finish their burst of words, and then with steady eye contact, simply say, "I'll finish my point, and then I'll hear yours." It's simple, it's clear, and it resets the conversation without you losing composure. What that communicates is this: I'm not afraid of you, I'm not competing with you, and I will not be pushed aside. That's boundary setting without aggression. See, difficult people often thrive on chaos. They rely on the fact that most people will either shrink back or explode when challenged, and either reaction gives them the upper hand. But when you stay calm, when you hold your ground without raising your tone, you take that advantage away. You're showing them you don't need to overpower them. You simply won't be moved. This is where the combination of words and presence matters. If your voice is steady and your body language is grounded, shoulders relaxed, posture open, you're signaling confidence without even trying. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't just stop the interruption in that moment. It rewires how people engage with you long term. They learn that you won't tolerate being dismissed, and so they begin to respect your space naturally. Now, sometimes the interruption comes not out of malice but out of habit. Maybe the person is just used to dominating conversations. That's why the way you enforce boundaries matters. If you snap back, "Stop interrupting me," you may be right, but you also create defensiveness, and the conversation can spiral. If instead you calmly say, "I want to finish my thought, and then I'll listen to yours," you're not only holding your ground, you're modeling respect. You're setting the standard for how you expect to be treated, while still offering them a seat at the table. And here's the powerful part. Boundaries like this don't just stop interruptions, they expand your influence. Because when people see you can handle pressure with calm authority, you gain credibility. You're not the person who has to shout to be heard. You're the person who commands the room simply by standing firm. That's the kind of presence that people don't forget. The key is remembering that boundaries don't have to be walls, they can be doors. Firm, clear, and respectful doors that let the right energy in and keep the wrong energy in check. The way you say something is almost always more important than the words themselves. People don't just listen to the content of your sentences, they listen to the music underneath your voice. Your tone, your pace, your inflection, all of that communicates confidence or insecurity before the meaning of your words even lands. And if your tone doesn't match the authority of your message, people won't take it seriously. One of the biggest tone traps is something called uptalk. You've heard it. It's when every sentence ends like a question, even when you're not asking one. "I think this is the right direction," or "We should go with option A." That upward inflection at the end communicates doubt, as if you're seeking permission for your own thoughts. Now imagine hearing that from someone you're supposed to trust or follow. Even if their idea is brilliant, it feels uncertain. Uptalk drains authority from the room. Now compare that to a downward inflection at the end of a sentence. Instead of lifting your tone at the end, you let it fall. "This is the right direction. We should go with option A." Same words, completely different impact. That small shift changes how people receive you, because a downward tone signals finality and certainty. It tells people, "I mean what I'm saying, and I don't need you to validate it." Another subtle shift is pace. When you're nervous or defensive, you tend to speed up. You rush through sentences, almost trying to get them over with before someone can cut you off. But fast speech signals insecurity. Confident people don't race to finish their thoughts. They take their time. They pause. They let silence carry weight. And the slower, more deliberate your pace, the more authority your words carry. It's not about dragging things out. It's about not being afraid to hold space. Volume plays a role too. Many think that being respected means being loud. But loud doesn't always equal powerful. It often equals desperate. Real authority comes from speaking at a controlled, steady volume that forces people to lean in, rather than tune out. When you lower your voice just slightly, people instinctively listen harder. You're not competing for attention, you're commanding it. This is why the best communicators aren't always the most eloquent. They're the ones who align their tone with their message. Their words say one thing, and their delivery reinforces it. When those two elements work together, the impact is magnetic. And here's the key. You don't need to change your personality to do this. You don't need to suddenly sound like a news anchor or a motivational speaker. You simply need to strip away the habits that leak uncertainty, like uptalk, racing speech, or filler words, and replace them with grounded, deliberate delivery.
Your natural voice, when used with confidence, is enough. Because in the end, respect doesn't just come from what you say, it comes from the way your voice makes people feel when you say it. When you're dealing with difficult people, the instinct is often to push back. You brace yourself for the argument, you prepare to defend every word, and you assume the only way forward is to fight for ground. But here's the twist. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't resistance, it's disarming them. And one of the fastest ways to do that is with a well-placed compliment. Now I don't mean flattery. I'm not talking about buttering someone up or faking admiration. People can smell that kind of manipulation a mile away. What I'm talking about is acknowledgement, because when people feel acknowledged, their defenses come down. And when their defenses come down, you suddenly have room to steer the conversation, instead of getting stuck in a battle. Let me show you how this works. Imagine someone is being difficult in a meeting, shooting holes in your idea. Instead of snapping back with "you're wrong," or getting into a back-and-forth debate, you start with acknowledgement. That's a fair concern. Here's another perspective. What happens in that moment is subtle but powerful. You've let them know you heard them, that their voice matters, but you didn't surrender your point. You simply opened the door for your idea to be considered, without triggering a defensive wall. This works because difficult people are often expecting resistance. They're braced for it. When you come at them with pure force, they push harder. But when you meet them with acknowledgement, it throws them off balance in the best way possible. It's like verbal judo. You use their energy against them instead of fighting it head on. Compliments can also be used to redirect tension. Let's say someone is dominating the conversation and won't let anyone else speak. You can step in and say, "You clearly have a lot of passion for this. Let's also hear from." You've acknowledged their intensity, but you've also created space for others to speak. They feel seen, but you've regained control. And here's the key. Your acknowledgement has to be genuine. Find something real to recognize. It could be their effort, their perspective, or even their passion, even if you don't agree with their conclusions. People crave respect, and when you show them respect without giving up your own, you shift the dynamic from combat to conversation. What's interesting is that this approach doesn't just calm the other person down, it elevates you. Because the person who can remain calm, generous, and in control in the face of difficulty is the person everyone else in the room looks up to. You're not just handling the difficult person, you're modeling leadership for everyone watching, and that's the bigger picture. Acknowledgement isn't weakness, it's not surrender, it's strategy. It's choosing to connect first so you can lead second. And when you do that, difficult people stop feeling like enemies you have to defeat, and start feeling like challenges you know how to navigate. Because the truth is, respect grows fastest in the soil of acknowledgement. Respect isn't only about the words you use or the boundaries you set, it's also about the energy you bring into the room. People can feel it before you even open your mouth. You've experienced this. You've been around someone who didn't say much, but the moment they walked in, the atmosphere shifted. They carried themselves with a kind of calm certainty that made everyone else straighten up a little. That's presence, and presence is magnetic. The tricky thing is, many of us think presence means being the loudest, the most animated, or the most charismatic. But real presence has nothing to do with being flashy. It comes from being grounded. It comes from the way you carry your body, the steadiness of your eye contact, and the calm confidence in your movements. You don't have to dominate the space, you just have to own the space you're in. Start with posture. If you walk into a room slouched, staring at the floor, arms crossed, you're telling the world before you speak that you don't want to be seen. And guess what? People will treat you that way. But if you walk in standing tall, shoulders back, relaxed but open, you send the opposite message: I'm comfortable being here. That alone changes how people perceive you. Then there's eye contact, not staring people down, not trying to intimidate, but simply looking at them with steady attention when they speak, and holding their gaze briefly when you respond. It shows that you're present, that you value the exchange, and that you're not afraid to be seen. The fastest way to make someone feel small is to look past them. The fastest way to make someone feel valued is to see them fully. And energy isn't just physical, it's emotional. If you carry tension, frustration, or insecurity into a room, people feel it. They mirror it. But if you bring calm, grounded energy, people also mirror that. Human beings are wired to pick up on each other's states, and your ability to remain composed under pressure is contagious. That's why leaders who keep their cool in chaos inspire trust. People feel safe around them, and safety creates respect. What's powerful about this is that it doesn't require a word. You can command attention before the conversation even starts. You can set the tone of an interaction before anyone else has spoken. And when you combine that energy with everything else we've talked about, clear language, intentional silence, firm boundaries, the right tone, and acknowledgement of others, you don't just handle difficult people, you transform how people experience you. Because the truth is, presence isn't about making others smaller, it's about standing fully in your own space, so others can't help but take notice. If you stop leaking power through your words, master silence, set boundaries, and project grounded energy, you won't just handle difficult people, you'll become unforgettable. Because respect isn't demanded, it's earned, through how you carry yourself in every single conversation.